Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Tester, and you know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time with Hadassah Alderson today, and we'll be talking about her book, The Bible According to Eve. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Hadassah. Thank you so much for joining me today on Daily Spark TV.
Hi, it's good to meet you.
You as well. Now, as is tradition here on the show, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves because there may be a few folks out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question to you is, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you, you?
Well, part of what makes me is my grandmas. Even though they both passed on. One of them was a great storyteller. She used to tell me stories when I was little, and the other one was a great reader, and she used to read histories and mysteries, and she had all these books on her shelf.
Well, I definitely have fond memories of my grandmother as well, so I can definitely relate to you there. Now, when it comes to being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that it was a way for you to share with the world?
Well, like I said, when I was little, my grandma used to tell me stories. She also used to read to me. And I think even back then, I wanted to be the one who told the stories.
Yes, I can definitely understand that. There is a certain art form to being a really good storyteller. And I find that most or that many writers have that ability to be great storytellers. We end up loving their novels and we want more from them. So I can definitely understand how you came about that. Now, the title of your book, The Bible According to Eve. Now, I must admit, that is a curious title. I could see folks on the shelves, so to speak, like in the bookstore going, that's a curious one. Let me pick it up and read the back. How did you come about the title for the book?
Well, because I was writing about the women in the Bible. And also because the character of Eve in the first poem, I thought she was sort of a commanding presence.
Absolutely. I can definitely understand that. And I think that in general, as women, whenever we see the name Eve, we kind of have a natural curiosity. What's going to be said there? So I could see how you arrived at that conclusion. Now, for some of the authors, I find that they have presented their book in a way that helps us as the reader go along on the journey, if you will, that you present it in a way where you should read page 1 before reading page 20, right? Others have perhaps done it in a way where it really doesn't matter where you start as long as you start. Is there a more correct or most correct way to read your book?
Well, I really believe it can be written about any order so long as you start with one poem and finish with it.
And I think that that's a grace, if you will, that poetry extends to the reader. You don't have to read them page after next, but you can, like you said, kind of open it up and start anywhere and be inspired by wherever your finger lands, so to speak. So I like that. Now, I always try to ask my authors this question, and that is, would you say that your book is appropriate for our high schoolers? So that would be ages around 14 to 18, or do they need a little bit more life experience, or do they need a little bit more Bible knowledge in order to be able to follow along?
Well, I think even someone who has not read the Bible can follow along these poems, because I've had friends who have not read the Bible much who can follow along with these poems. But I think maybe a little bit older, because there is some material in there that's kind of adult.
Gotcha, gotcha. And see, that's why I always ask that question, because you never know. And it's really nice to have that qualification. I know that I am a gifter of books, so I like to make sure that I'm giving something that's age appropriate. So thank you so much for that clarification. Now, for some of the authors that I've had an opportunity to speak with, they said that there has been a nudge, a prompting, a knowing that they needed to get this particular book out in a timely fashion. How did you come about the idea, or how did you know that it was time for this book to be written?
Well, yeah, I hate to admit it, but I think I came across, I knew it was the time for it to be written because I knew it was the time for me to write it. I didn't actually check the media or anyone. I just simply wrote the book.
So it was just the perfect timing for you. This wasn't to be on trend or anything like that. Absolutely, absolutely. And I find that many times, when we're trying to do things that are on trend, they tend to be just that, trendy. They're only around for that particular period, and then the trend changes and it's on with something else. But those things that are presented from the heart, those things that are presented to be a gift, if you will, for the reader, those things do tend to stay around a lot longer. So I think that's actually smart on your half. Now, when it comes to the writing process for you, did you find that you needed any particular environment in order to write? Many of the authors that I talk to, they'll say, well, I needed someplace quiet. So I either got up early in the morning or I stayed up late at night. Other people don't mind the hustle and bustle, if you will, of just having people around. Some even might go to a coffee shop because they like the white noise, if you will, of all of the machines and the people talking. Did you have a particular environment that worked best for you?
Well, I like to work. I like to work in my living room at home with a big chief tablet and a pen, felt pen. However, sometimes I ended up working at work anyway because I was a volunteer at a mental health club, and so sometimes I took breaks during the day to write.
Mhm, mhm. I find that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that you did take breaks in order to write. I know that that's something that I suggest as a pastoral counselor. That's one of the things that I suggest to my client base is have that handy dandy journal around. You can make it as fancy or as plain as you want it, but to just be able to get those thoughts down, because we can come up with some really great ideas, but if we don't have the time to write it down or to save it, if you will, many times the moment passes us by and we're not able to recall what that was. So I'm so glad to hear that you did that as well. I'm finding that many authors do that. Now, when it comes to selecting the women that you chose to write about, there are women who are named in the Bible. There are women who are not named in the Bible. How did you go about selecting which women you would actually write about?
Well, basically, it was my goal to write about every woman in the Bible, whether I had a name for them or not, if they were present. Now, the thing is, it seems that I have, if I could redo my Bible again, and I'm not going to, I would write about Jacob's other daughters besides Dinah, because it turns out that Dinah was not the only one. She's simply the only one given a name. And so, yeah, in fact, when Jacob lost his son Joseph, his daughters and sons both tried to console him over his loss. And when Jacob moved to Egypt to live in Goshen, in the land of Goshen, he took his daughters and granddaughters with him. So it's kind of a funny thing, you think about all those daughters and the fact that their names aren't given, and yet they must have been important to him because they were his daughters.
So absolutely. I find that there are so many unnamed women. There are so many unsung heroes in a lot of our history, in our sacred texts, as well as in our day-to-day history. And we do need to find out more about them, because like you said, if they weren't important, they wouldn't have gone along on the journey. If they were important, they wouldn't have been mentioned in the overall story. So we know that they're important enough to be included. It's just kind of sad that we don't know their names. You are so right about that. So Hadassah, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of my book is The Bible According to Eve. You can get it at Amazon.com or where books are sold. And you can keep track of me on through Amazon or through my publisher.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, do you have something to share? Be a guest. Want to sponsor an episode? Visit drangela.chester.com. Thanks again for watching Daily Spark TV.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. So Hadassah, I want to ask you, out of all of the women that you chose to write about, were there any particular women, or was there one woman in particular that really inspired you?
Oddly enough, Leah. I think Leah inspired me because, she was someone who she had to live with the fact that she wasn't her husband's favorite wife, and yet she was strong. She worked hard and she persevered, and she was a strong woman. Looks aren't everything where women are concerned, and I believe Leah managed to really make up for the lack of personal appearance.
Well, my mother used to tell me that, and I'm sure it's a Southern phrase, that pretty is as pretty does. And the way that we understood that meant that, you could have an attractive face that, the general population would say that you have an attractive face. But if you have a mean disposition or a nasty attitude, that detracts from that physical beauty that you may have. The same way that many times someone may say, well, that person may not be as physically attractive as they like, but their personality is beautiful, that they're giving and loving and kind. So it really and truly is all of the other attributes that really make a person, and especially a woman, as beautiful as she is. So I have to agree with you there. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I think that people really agree that those personal characteristics can really help you shine. So I think that's a great point that you tagged on there. Now, when it comes to ideas, for so many authors, they are always thinking. Authors to me are just as creative as artists, like musicians are. There's always a thought running through your head, and you just have to, of course, jot those down. I spoke with one author. He says, I'm working on like 3 books because I can't get the other ideas out of my head. And it's like, that is awesome sauce. I love it. So I want to ask you, how did you come up with the idea for writing this particular book?
Well, I came up with the idea because I thought that 2 things. One, I have bipolar schizoaffective disorder, and I was imagining one day a scene in my head, which then I made into the first poem. So it was one of my hallucinations almost. But the other thing was kind of an intellectual thing. In Judaism, everyone knows who Maimonides is. He's the great medieval philosopher. But, it's kind of funny because the great Jewish philosopher in the modern age, Spinoza, he's not really a Jew anymore. He left the faith. And so I wondered a lot, even though I like Spinoza, I wondered a lot if it isn't true that maybe Judaism needs to have philosophers for the modern age and not just for the past. Of course, I'm not a philosopher, but I thought that writing about women was a way of doing philosophy almost, because it's kind of, I kind of believe that sometimes when you run against the wall, you have this one question you can't get out of your head. Sometimes what you need is a new question and not a new answer. And I thought that the women of the Bible, people talk about feminism and how people need new ways to look at scripture. Well, I thought, well, I'm female, why not? I could find a new way of looking at scripture, simply writing it from the point of view of the women and not the men.
Oh, you said a mouthful there, and I love that. In that, if we ask the people that tend to be the subject of the discussion, we can get a different point of view, as opposed to a different group of people or a different gender writing about the other gender. You are so right there. I think that many times most women will agree and say, like, if you have a male doctor, that male doctor, maybe when you're talking about those female cares, issues, and concerns, he doesn't really know, because he's a man. Not discounting him or that he cannot understand the text, but just the personal experiences are different. So you're definitely right there. Having that first person point of view can definitely make all the difference in the world. I have to agree with you on that one. Now, you have not, this is not just a one book series, if I understand this. Why did you feel that it was important to have this as a 4-book set?
Well, I hate to admit this, the main reason was length. I had 1,900 pages at first. And I thought if I was going to sell the book, I needed to cut it down a little. And so I cut it down into 4 volumes. However, I cut them down into the first 5 books of Moses, the historical books, the prophets, and then everything else. And this is this is largely the Jewish way of cutting down the books.
But how smart is that? That totally and completely makes sense, because if we look at how we understand the structure of how our Bible is put together, it walks us through the same type of structure. So that helps us understand, okay, this part goes there, this is this part, and this is that part. I love that you were consistent in that way. And I think it will help people make the correlation between where they are in the Bible as well. So I think that was really smart on your part. And you're right. 1,900 pages, that would have been overwhelming, but breaking it down, I think is incredibly smart. Not only just for the correlation between your book and where they are in the Bible, but I think for research sake, it will also help that person who's looking for a particular person who wants to dive deeper. They don't have to thumb through, an encyclopedia, but they're able to get the appropriate book out of the series to make it easier for them. I love that. I love that. Now, if there is one thing that you want to make sure that the readers of your book take away from having read your poetry, what would that be?
I would like them to take away the notion that there are different ways of looking at the Bible, and that and that there's more than one perspective. It's not just men have different perspectives on scripture. There's a scripture, there's a law that says that there are laws in the Bible that are that demonize the sick at times. People are mentally ill. Well, a mentally ill man might read that and think, well, what does that mean to me? If I still love the Bible, what does that mean to me? And of course, in later Jewish tradition, the rabbis say that the sick people are to be protected and not demonized for their illness. But all those thousands of years ago, people didn't understand mental illness, and yes, sometimes the punishment was stoning. So it's kind of people look at the Bible, they look at it in different perspective. perspectives, and not all of them are negative perspectives. You know, when I was a little girl, I used to love the story of Esther because she was such a beautiful queen. And it's a positive role model for a girl to have this beautiful woman who means so much to Jews, and because she was brave and willing to put her own life at risk.
Agreed. I too fell in love with the heart of Esther and how brave she was in the middle of it all, and just thinking of would we modern women be able to do the same thing? Would we enact the same way that she did? So you are so right there, and I love that you have taken the time to put all of the beautiful women of our sacred text of our Bible in one place for us to be able to just take our time and slowly read through and see the beautiful attributes of how strong and courageous they were, and how they have inspired us over the years. Well, Hadassah, thank you so much for spending time with me here today. I have enjoyed my conversation with you. Before I let you go, though, if you can remind everyone one last time, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy?
The title of my book is The Bible According to Eve, and you can get it in Amazon.com and other booksellers.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again, Hadassah, for being a guest on Daily Spark TV.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And viewers, thank you for spending time with us here today as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me today, and I thank you for doing so. As always, I hope that the Lord will continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.
Welcome to Daily Spark TV. Are you an author with a faith-based book? Be a guest. Serious about your product or service and want to try something new? Sponsor an episode. I see you're ready to get started. So visit drangela.chester.com. Thanks again for watching Daily Spark TV.